The acrid stench of burnt wiring and unwashed bodies hit Finn Dawson's nostrils as he stepped through the airlock into Outpost Epsilon. The station hung in the shadow of a gas giant, forgotten by most of civilized space, exactly how its inhabitants preferred it. Finn adjusted his worn flight jacket, feeling the reassuring weight of his blaster against his hip as he moved through the crowded market corridor. "Just find the parts, pay Harkin, and get back to the ship," he muttered to himself, scanning the makeshift stalls for the merchant who supposedly had the gravitational stabilizer his ship desperately needed. 6 months of scavenging the outer rim had yielded barely enough credits to keep his small freighter, the Wayfarer, operational. One more big score, and he could finally afford to return to the core systems. Maybe even visit Earth again after 5 long years. The market narrowed. As Finn pushed deeper into the station's guts, the legitimate businesses giving way to shadier operations, he spotted Harkin's symbol, a stylized nova, painted on a rusted bulkhead, and turned down a dimly lit passage. The passage opened onto a circular chamber where various species gathered in a loose ring. In the center, a broad-shouldered alien with mottled gray skin was displaying merchandise on a hovering platform. "Next item," the merchant announced, his translator device giving his words an unnatural cadence. "Rare specimen from the Voshi system." Finn's attention snapped to the platform as a small figure was pushed forward. A girl, or at least the alien equivalent, with iridescent blue skin that seemed to shimmer even in the poor lighting. Her limbs were thin, almost fragile-looking, and a complex pattern of luminescent markings traced across her forehead and down her neck. Her eyes, large and entirely silver without visible pupils, darted fearfully around the room. "Voshi race," the merchant continued. "Telepathic capabilities. Perfect for security systems or entertainment." Finn's stomach churned. Slavery was supposedly outlawed in civilized space, but out here on the rim, such laws meant nothing. The girl's wrists were bound with energy cuffs, and a neural suppressor collar circled her slender neck. "Please," the girl's voice suddenly echoed in Finn's mind, causing him to flinch. "Don't leave me here." He looked around, but none of the other attendees reacted. The telepathic message had been directed solely at him. "Starting bid at 15,000 credits, the merchant announced. Finn had exactly 18,642 credits, every last bit of his savings meant for the ship parts and fuel to get home. "I can help you," the girl's voice came again in his mind. "I know things. ... Valuable things," called out a hulking creature with cybernetic implants protruding from its skull. The merchant smiled. 20,000 from Drex. "Do I hear more?" Finn's hand raised before his brain could stop it. 25,000. The crowd turned to look at him, the only human in attendance. "The human offers 25,000, the merchant said, surprise evident in his voice. Drex turned toward Finn, cybernetic eye worry as it focused. 30,000, he growled. "I don't have 30,000, Finn thought desperately. "You don't need it," the girl's voice whispered in his mind. "There's another way." Before Finn could process this, alarms blared throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in pulsing red. "Hegemony patrols detected," announced the station's automated system. "All unregistered vessels must depart immediately." Chaos erupted as buyers and sellers scrambled to escape. In the confusion, Finn pushed his way to the platform. The merchant was hastily gathering his valuables, momentarily ignoring his captive. "Come with me if you want to live," Finn whispered, deactivating the energy cuffs with a universal key he'd acquired on a previous job. The girl's silver eyes widened. She nodded and slipped her hand into his. Together, they melted into the panicking crowd. "My name is Tella," her voice sounded in his mind as they raced through the corridors toward the docking bay. "And you have just made yourself the most wanted man in this sector, Finn Dawson." "How do you know my name?" he asked aloud, pulling her around a corner as a group of armored figures marched past. "Your thoughts are accessible to me," she replied, and loud, very loud. They reached the Wayfarer, a battered but reliable light freighter that had been Finn's home for half a decade. As they approached the boarding ramp, plasma fire erupted behind them, scorching the deck plates. "Stop right there, human." Drex's amplified voice boomed. That property belongs to the hegemony now. Finn shoved Tella up the ramp. Get in and strap yourself down. Drawing his blaster, he fired several covering shots before lunging into the ship and slapping the ramp control, as the Wayfarer's engines roared to life. Finn realized his life had just become infinitely more complicated.
Ow.
And his dreams of returning home had never seemed more distant. The Wayfarer shuddered as Finn pushed its aging engines beyond safety parameters. Weaving through the asteroid field surrounding Outpost Epsilon, 3 hegemony pursuit vessels followed, their sleek black hulls designed for intercepting smugglers and pirates. Their locking weapons, Finn called to Tella, who clung to her seat in the co-pilot position. Hold on. He slammed the control yoke sideways, sending the ship into a barrel roll between 2 massive asteroids. Energy beams sizzled past, superheating, the space where they had been moments before. Why are they so determined to get you back? Finn asked, his hands dancing across the controls. Tella's silver eyes reflected the chaotic light of the ship's dashboard. My people, the Voshi, were caretakers of ancient knowledge. The hegemony destroyed our world seeking that knowledge, but they didn't understand it requires our biology to access. A proximity alarm blared as one pursuer closed the gap. Cursed, diving beneath a spinning asteroid fragment. Oh. So they want to use you as some kind of ... key? Yes, Tella's mental voice seemed weaker now, strained. The neural suppressor weakened me, but I can still... She closed her eyes, the luminescent markings on her skin brightening momentarily. Suddenly, the nearest hegemony vessel veered sharply, colliding with an asteroid in a spectacular explosion. Finn stared at her in shock. Did you just... Their pilot's mind was... Simple to confuse, she replied, slumping in her chair. I cannot do more. Not yet. Taking advantage of the chaos, Finn plotted a desperate jump into hyperspace. The navigational computer protested they hadn't cleared the asteroid field's gravitational interference, but he overrode the safety protocols. This is either brilliant or suicidal, he muttered, pulling the hyperdrive lever. Stars stretched into lines as the Wayfarer lurched into hyperspace, leaving their pursuers behind. For now, hours later, Finn found Tella examining the ship's limited library console in the cramped common area. You need food, he said, offering a ration bar. It's not great, but it's nutritious. She accepted it with a graceful nod. Thank you. Finn Dawson. Not just for this, but for saving me when logic dictated you shouldn't. Yeah, well, logic isn't my strongest trait according to my former commanding officer. He sat across from her. We need to talk about what happens next. The Wayfarer isn't exactly inconspicuous, and we're low on fuel. We can't run forever. You don't need to run forever, Tella said, her silver eyes meeting his. Only until we reach the resistance? Resistance? Against the hegemony? Finn raised an eyebrow. I thought that was just propaganda. It exists. Small but growing. She hesitated. With what I know, what I can access, they might finally have a chance. The ship's communication system suddenly crackled to life with an incoming transmission. Finn reached for his blaster, but Tella placed a calming hand on his arm. That's not the hegemony, she assured him. A holographic figure materialized above the console lean, scarred alien with reptilian features and intelligent eyes. Finn Dawson, the stranger said, I am Jor-El. You have something the hegemony wants very badly, which means you need friends very badly. How did you find us? Finn demanded. And how do you know my name? Jor-El's scaled lips curved into what might have been a smile. The resistance has eyes everywhere. Even in slave markets where humans make impulsive decisions. Tella stepped forward. He speaks truth, Finn. I sense no deception. I'm transmitting coordinates, Jor-El continued. If you want to live in, if the Voshi wants her people's sacrifice to mean something, you'll meet us there within 12 cycles. The transmission ended, leaving coordinates glowing on the console. Finn studied the location. This is deep in the scorched sectors. Nothing survives there after the quantum wars. That's why it's perfect, Tella said softly. Will you take us there? Finn ran a hand through his hair. I was supposed to be heading home, not diving into a resistance against the most powerful force in the galaxy. What does it humans say? Tella asked, her head tilting curiously. Sometimes the right path isn't the easy one. Despite everything, Finn laughed. Something like that. He moved to the pilot's seat and began inputting the coordinates. Let's see what this resistance of yours is made of. As they prepared for the jump to the scorched sectors, neither noticed the microscopic tracking device embedded in the Wayfarer's hull, silently broadcasting their position to a hegemony dreadnought moving steadily through the darkness of space. The scorched sectors lived up to their name. Outside the Wayfarer's viewport, the remains of shattered planets drifted in eerie silence, fragments of worlds destroyed in the quantum wars decades ago. Radiation warnings flashed across the console. As Finn navigated the treacherous debris field, "We're approaching the coordinates," he said, eyeing the scanner suspiciously. "Still not picking up any signs of habitation?" Tella stood behind him, her hand resting lightly on the back of his chair. The luminescent patterns on her skin had grown stronger since escaping the neural suppressor, casting a soft blue glow in the dimly lit cockpit. "They're here," she assured him, shielded from detection, as if on cue. A transmission burst through their comms. "Wayfarer, adjust course to heading 227 Mark 44, came Jor-El's voice. "Maintain exactly 1/4 thrust and disable your navigational shields. Disable shields in this debris field." Finn protested. "That's suicide. It's the only way through our security screen," Jor-El replied. "Trust human or turn back now." With a reluctant grunt, Finn complied. The ship shuddered as they altered course toward what appeared to be an impenetrable wall of planetary fragments. "If we crash and die," Finn muttered, "I'm going to be very annoyed with you." Tella's mental laughter rippled through his mind. "Your species has such a fascinating approach to mortality." As they approached the debris wall, a section suddenly shimmered and dissolved, revealing a narrow passage. Finn guided the Wayfarer through with surgical precision, sweat beading on his forehead. The passage twisted through the debris field before opening into a massive hollow asteroid. Inside this rocky shell, a sprawling station had been constructed, with ships of various designs docked around its perimeter. "Welcome to Nexus," Jor-El's voice announced as landing instructions appeared on their console. After docking, they were greeted by a small security team led by Jor-El himself. The reptilian resistance fighter was taller than he'd appeared in the hologram, his scales bearing the metallic sheen of someone who had survived hard radiation exposure. The Voshi survivor Jor-El nodded respectfully to Tella. "Commander Dasha is eager to speak with you." "And what about me?" Finn asked, hand casually near his blaster. "The human who paid his life savings to free a slave?" Jor-El's vertical pupils narrowed in amusement. "Your reputation precedes you as well." They were escorted through the station, a patchwork of salvaged modules and repurposed military hardware. Beings from at least a dozen species moved with purpose through the corridors. Some eyed Finn with curiosity, others with suspicion. Commander Dasha waited in a circular chamber dominated by a holographic display of the surrounding sectors. She was a striking figure, humanoid with reflective platinum skin and eyes that shifted color like oil on water, where her hairline would be. Crystalline structures emerged from her scalp, forming a natural crown. "The last daughter of Voshi," Dasha said, her voice resonating with a melodic quality, "and her human protector. You've taken an enormous risk coming here." "Seems to be my specialty lately," Finn replied. Dasha's eyes flashed amber. "The hegemony has placed a bounty on both your heads. 50,000 credits for the human alive. Or dead. For the Voshi." She paused. 5 million? Alive only? Finn whistled. "I should have asked for more at the auction." "This isn't a joke," Dasha snapped. "The hegemony doesn't offer rewards like that unless they're desperate." Stepped forward. "They should be desperate. I carry the collective memory of my people's final discovery before the destruction of our world. The location of the progenitor's defense system." A hush fell over the room. Dasha's crystalline crown pulsed with inner light. "The legends are true." "Then," she asked, "not legends, history." Tella placed her palm on the holographic display. It flickered and reshaped into an image of a massive installation embedded in a dwarf planet. The architects built it to defend against threats from beyond the galaxy. My ancestors were its caretakers until we discovered the hegemony's true nature and hid it away. Finn looked between them in confusion. Someone mind explaining? What's going on? The progenitors were an ancient species that seeded this galaxy with life, Jor-El explained. They left behind technologies beyond our comprehension before disappearing millions of years ago. The hegemony has been hunting these artifacts to consolidate their power. And this defense system, Finn ventured, it could stop them? It could. Change everything, Dasha said, studying the hologram. We've been fighting a guerrilla war for decades with no real hope of victory. With this. Her color-shifting eyes gleamed. Warning klaxons suddenly blared throughout the station. A resistance fighter burst into the chamber, panic evident in her voice. Commander, Gemini Dreadnought detected entering the sector. They've found us. Dasha's expression hardened. How? Our shielding technology? It's my fault, Finn realized with horror. They must have tagged my ship. Evacuation Protocol Omega, Dasha ordered. All essential personnel to escape vessels. She turned to Tella and Finn. We need to get you out of here. But the resistance, Tella began. It's more than this station. Dasha cut her off. You carry the key to our future. Nothing matters more than getting you to the progenitor facility. The station shuddered as the first barrage of hegemony weapons struck the outer defenses. Emergency lighting bathed the corridors in pulsing red as they raced toward the evacuation bay. I didn't sign up for a war, Finn said as they ran. Just trying to do the right thing. Tella's voice resonated in his mind. The right thing often leads to unexpected destinations, Finn Dawson. The question is whether you have the courage to continue the journey. As they reached the small assault craft designated for their escape, Finn knew he had already made his choice. Whatever awaited them at the progenitor facility, whatever role he had stumbled into in this galactic conflict, he would see it through. For Tella, for the Resistance, and perhaps for a future where humanity could stand tall among the stars. The assault craft burst from Nexus Station's hangar bay, engines flaring as Finn pushed them to maximum thrust. Behind them, the Resistance base erupted in a series of explosions as hegemony weapons found their mark. Those people, Finn muttered, watching the destruction through the rear sensors, they're dying because of us. They're dying for something greater, Jor-El corrected grimly. The reptilian fighter had insisted on accompanying them, along with a quiet, dark-skinned woman named Petra who claimed to be an archaeologist specializing in progenitor artifacts. Tella stood transfixed by the viewport, her silver eyes reflecting the distant flashes of battle. Commander Dasha is still alive, she said softly. She and many others escaped. I can sense them. The evacuation protocols were designed for this possibility, Jor-El explained, checking the ship's systems. Resistance will scatter and regroup. But without what we're seeking, it will all be for nothing. The assault craft was smaller than the Wayfarer, but significantly faster. With military-grade shields and stealth systems, as they cleared the scorched sectors, Finn plotted a course based on the coordinates Tella had provided. This can't be. Right, he frowned, looking at the navigation display. These coordinates point to the dead zone in the Verandi system. Nothing survives there, the radiation levels are off the charts. Perfect camouflage, Petra spoke for the first time, voice carrying a musical accent. Avoshi were masters of misdirection. What better place to hide something precious than somewhere no one would willingly go? 3 days of tense travel followed. They dodged hegemony patrols twice and maintained communication silence, unsure who might be listening. Tella spent hours in meditation, her luminescent markings pulsing with increasing intensity as they approached their destination. The dead zone lived up to its name, a vast cloud of irradiated gas and debris surrounding a collapsed star. Sensors blared warnings as they penetrated the outer boundary. Shields at maximum, Finn announced, his fingers dancing across the controls. But they won't hold forever in this soup. We won't need forever, Tella replied, her eyes now glowing so brightly that it was difficult to look directly at her. I can feel it calling to me. She placed her hands on the navigation console. Immediately, the ship's systems began behaving strangely. Displays flickered with symbols Finn didn't recognize. and the engines adjusted their harmonic frequency without input. "What's happening?" he demanded. "The Voshi connection," Petra whispered, watching in fascination. "She's interfacing directly with both our ship and the progenitor systems." Through the swirling clouds of radioactive gas, a massive shape began to emerge, a structure. Embedded in a dwarf planet that had been hidden in the heart of the dead zone, it resembled a vast technological flower, with petal-like segments extending from a central core, each segment miles long. Tella announced, her voice overlaid with harmonics that hadn't been present before. "Last creation of the progenitors, guarded by my ancestors for 100,000 years. The assault." Craft approached one of the petals, which split open to reveal a docking bay. They landed with barely a shudder, the ship guided by unseen forces rather than Finn's piloting. "Atmosphere is breathable," Jor-El reported, checking the external sensors. "Temperature stable. This place is still active after all this time." They disembarked cautiously, weapons ready. The interior of the facility was illuminated by soft blue light emanating from the walls themselves. The architecture was unlike anything Finn had seen, flowing curves and impossible angles that somehow worked together in perfect harmony. "It's beautiful," Petra breathed, running her fingers along a wall inscribed with intricate patterns. Tella moved ahead confidently, her feet barely touching the ground as she followed some invisible path. The others hurried to keep pace with her. "The progenitors built this facility as a sanctuary," she explained as they walked. "A place where life could be preserved and protected from extinction-level threats. The weapon systems were secondary, a last resort." They entered a vast circular chamber dominated by a column of swirling energy that reached from floor to ceiling. Around this column, control stations arranged in concentric rings pulsed with light. "This is it," Tella said, approaching the nearest station, the heart of the forge. As her fingers touched the controls, the entire chamber came alive. Holographic displays materialized around them, showing star systems, planetary defense grids, and what appeared to be massive shield generators. "It's not a weapon," Finn realized, studying the displays. "Yes. It's a shield network. Something that could protect entire planets." "Against the hegemony's planet killers," Jor-El added, his eyes wide with understanding. "This could change everything." Petra moved from display to display, her expertise evident as she quickly grasped the facility's purpose. The progenitors didn't build this to destroy, they built it to preserve, to protect developing civilizations until they could stand on their own. Della placed both hands on the central console, her entire body now illuminated from within. "The network has been dormant for millennia, but it can be reactivated." The satellites still orbit key worlds disguised as moons or asteroids. A deep rumble shook the facility, causing them all to freeze. "That wasn't the system activating," Finn said, drawing his blaster. "Something's breached the outer defenses." Jor-El checked a portable scanner. "Hegemony signatures. At least one heavy cruiser has entered the dead zone." "How did they find us?" Petra demanded. "It doesn't matter," Finn replied, moving to defensive position. "Tella, how long do you need to activate this shield network?" "The system recognizes me, but there are protocols and other." Stronger tremor shook the chamber. The sound of energy weapons echoed from distant corridors. "They're inside," Jor-El hissed, unslinging his rifle. "Petra, help protect Tella. Finn and I will hold them off as long as we can." As Finn and Jor-El took positions at the chamber entrance, the first wave of hegemony troops appeared, humanoid figures in gleaming black armor, their faceplates revealing nothing of the beings inside. Leading them was a tall figure whose armor bore distinctive markings. He removed his helmet to reveal pale features of aristocratic beauty, high cheekbones, silver eyes, and hair so blonde it appeared white. Admiral Vorst Jor-El spat. "The Butcher of Kaldor, surrender the Voshi," Vorst called, his voice cultured. "And calm, do so, and I may allow you to live as subjects of the hegemony rather than examples of its justice." Finn glanced back at Tella, her hands moving in complex patterns over the ancient controls, her concentration absolute. "You know," Finn called back, "for a supposedly advanced civilization, you guys really need to work on your negotiation tactics." Without warning, He fired his blaster at the ceiling above the hegemony forces, causing a cascade of debris that temporarily blocked their advance. The battle had begun. Stars. Plasma fire ricocheted through the ancient chamber as Finn and Jor-El fought desperately to hold off the hegemony forces. They had created a makeshift barricade from fallen debris, but it was only a matter of time before they were overwhelmed. That activation coming? Finn shouted over his shoulder, ducking as an energy bolt sizzled past his head. Almost there, Petra called back. She stood beside Tella, following the Vashi's instructions to adjust controls on a secondary console. The system is awakening. The energy column at the center of the chamber pulsed brighter, sending waves of blue-white light rippling through. The facility, Finn felt a strange vibration through the soles of his boots, as though the entire structure was coming alive. Admiral Vorse's voice cut through the chaos. Your resistance is meaningless. The hegemony has dominated this galaxy for 10,000 years. No ancient technology will change that inevitability. You know what I've noticed about guys who talk about inevitability? Finn called back, firing. A precise shot that dropped a hegemony soldier. They're usually the ones most afraid of change. Jor-El gave him a sidelong glance. Is humor a standard human response to imminent death? No, Finn grinned, reloading his weapon. But it helps pass the time. You're by them. Tella suddenly gasped, her body arching as the luminescent patterns on her skin flared with blinding intensity. The holographic displays surrounding her shifted rapidly, showing planets across the galaxy where dormant progenitor satellites were awakening. It's working, Petra breathed. The shield network is coming online. Massive explosion rocked the chamber as hegemony forces breached one side of their barricade. Jor-El took a hit to his shoulder, green blood spattering across the ancient floor as he collapsed. Get him back, Finn ordered Petra. Dragged the injured resistance fighter toward the central platform. Alone now at the barricade, Finn knew he couldn't hold off the advancing troops much longer. His mind raced, searching for options. His gaze fell on the facility's power conduits running along the walls, and suddenly he had a desperate idea. Tella, he shouted. Can you redirect power from the shield network to the facility's internal systems? Just for a moment? Tella's silver eyes met his, understanding dawning in their depths. Yes, but it will delay the full activation. Do it. Finn commanded, firing his last energy cell at the advancing troops. As Vorst's forces pressed forward, the lights in the chamber dimmed momentarily. Then, with a surge that made the air itself crackle with energy, power flooded into the facilities. Defense systems. Arcs of blue lightning erupted from the walls and ceiling, engulfing the hegemony soldiers in webs of crackling energy that shorted out their armor systems and dropped them to the ground. Admiral Vorst alone remained standing, his advanced armor protecting him from the worst effects. He staggered forward, drawing an ornate sidearm. This changes nothing, he snarled, aiming at Tella. The hegemony cannot be denied. Finn launched himself from behind the barricade, tackling the Admiral with desperate strength. They crashed to the ground, wrestling for control of the weapon. Despite his slighter build, Vorst possessed inhuman strength, slowly forcing the weapon toward Finn's face. Human determination, Vorst sneered. Admirable, but futile. Your kind are still primitives playing with technologies beyond your understanding. Maybe, Finn grunted, straining against the Admiral's strength. But we primitives are pretty good at one thing. What's that? Vorst asked, his silver eyes narrowing. Improvisation. Finn suddenly relaxed his resistance and rolled sideways, causing Vorst to overbalance. In the same motion, Finn slammed his palm against a floor panel Tella had identified earlier as an emergency system. The section of floor beneath, Vorst abruptly vanished, sending the Admiral plummeting into a containment field designed to hold. Dangerous materials. The energy weapon clattered to the floor as Vorst was suspended in midair, trapped in a bubble. Of golden light at the central console, Tella completed the activation sequence. The energy column flared to blinding brightness, sending a pulse that rippled outward through the facility and beyond into space. It is done, she announced, her voice reverberating with power. The shield network is active. Every world targeted by the hegemony's planet killers now has protection. Finn helped Petra tend to Joral's wound as the immediate danger passed. Outside the facility, they could see through viewports that the hegemony cruiser was retreating, sensors likely overwhelmed by the energy surge from the activated progenitor technology. What happens now? Finn asked, looking at the holographic displays showing shield projectors activating around dozens of planets. Now, Tella said, placing her hand on his shoulder, we give hope to the galaxy. The hegemony's greatest weapon has been neutralized. Worlds that feared destruction can now stand against them. 3 months later, Finn stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt Nexus station, watching as ships from a dozen different species arrived for the historic gathering. The resistance had grown exponentially since the activation of the shield network, with formerly cowed civilizations now openly joining what had become known as the Terran Alliance, named for the human homeworld that had somehow become a symbol of defiance against overwhelming odds. Strange to think it all started with a slave auction, Jor-El commented, joining him at the viewport. The reptilian fighter's injured arm was still supported by a brace, but he had otherwise recovered. Strange to think I almost didn't stop, Finn replied. I just wanted parts for my ship and a ticket home. And now you are home. Tella's voice came from behind them. A different home than you imagined, perhaps, but one nonetheless. Which had changed in the months since the battle at the Forge, though still recognizably Voshi. Her connection to the progenitor systems had transformed her. The luminescent patterns on her skin had become permanent, and her abilities had grown beyond mere telepathy to something approaching the legendary powers of her ancestors. The delegates are assembled, she said. Commander Dasha requests your presence for the signing ceremony. As they walked to the council chamber, Finn reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From a simple scavenger to a key figure in the formation of a galactic alliance, the rescued becoming the rescuer, the hunted becoming hunters. In the grand chamber, representatives from 24 species waited around a circular table. At its head stood Commander Dasha, her crystalline crown gleaming beneath the lights. Today we formalize what began with a single act of human compassion, Dasha announced, as Finn took his place beside Tella. The Terran Alliance stands not just against the hegemony's tyranny, but for something greater, the right of all sentient beings to determine their own destiny. Admiral Vorst, now held in a diplomatic containment field, watched from a corner, his expression unreadable. The hegemony had demanded his return, but the Alliance had other plans his knowledge of. Hegemony defenses would prove invaluable in the coming conflict. As the representatives signed the treaty that would unite their worlds, Finn felt Tella's hand slip into his. Her mental voice brushed against his consciousness, warm and intimate. You once said humans are good at improvisation, she observed. I believe you have improvised something wonderful here. Finn squeezed her hand gently. We all did. Together. Outside the station, the first joint fleet of the Terran Alliance assembled ships of various designs and origins united under a common purpose. Among them, newly retrofitted with progenitor-inspired technology, the Wayfarer waited for its captains. Return, the stars had never seemed brighter, nor the void between them less empty. For in that void, humanity had found not just allies, but a greater destiny than they had ever imagined. Not as conquerors, but as unifiers. Not as masters, but as equals among the diverse children of the progenitors.